Do the latest questions surrounding Senator Burris's appointment raise new concerns for a state already struggling with a reputation for corruption? Just as the state prepares to focus on ethics reform, is this news just another setback? Joining us, our former Assistant U.S. Attorney and head of Governor Quinn's Illinois Reform Commission, Patrick Collins, and the director of the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform, Cindy Canary. Welcome back to Chicago tonight, both of you. We seem to talk a lot about this, don't we? So, Cindy, let me start with you. This news, I mean, you've seen a lot of it. Did it surprise you?
I think that more than anything else, I think it disappointed me. Ever since December 9th, when our former governor was arrested and then through the impeachment proceedings, I think it has been very clear that it should be a new day in this state. And I just don't understand what part of honesty and accountability and stepping forward isn't being understood.
And are you saying that relative to Senator Burris or to the failure of the legislative committee to disclose to its own members that this had been an amended affidavit?
Well, I think both of those things, but I think particularly Senator Burris. I mean, I think it was very clear that Harry Reid told him he had to go to the impeachment committee. He was there to explain not just to the committee, but to the voters of Illinois, the citizens of Illinois, what were the circumstances of his appointment. He was there to tell his story. And really, you know, whatever legally is the case, ethically, he did not have to just simply follow the line of questioning. He had every freedom to make a statement and tell that story.
Mr. Collins, is it a setback? I mean, here you are at the helm of this new commission, this new day dawning. Does this set you back?
It sucks some of the oxygen out of the room, I think. But I look at every crisis that we've had as an opportunity. And I think every time one of these things happens, it's yet another exhibit for why we need something meaningful. Not some window dressing, not something cosmetic, not something incremental, but something real. And I, again, selfishly as part of this commission, I think it gives us more momentum, and it gets people angrier. And so it gives us more momentum.
But practically speaking, okay, both of you are reformers, both of you are intent on cleaning up Illinois. What could you do, looking forward, that could make this impossible? I mean, can't someone always offer the testimony they choose? Can't a legislative panel release information when it chooses?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that we have to remember that, you know, we're not going to make things perfect here. If there are people that still don't want to be transparent and accountable, they won't be. But what we can really change is our culture and how we think about these things. And hopefully voters can say, no, no, if you're not straight with us, you're not coming back for another term.
In this Burris issue, we're seeing already divisions among legislators. In the midst, Mr. Collins, of you impaneling this commission at the behest of Governor Quinn, the legislature's got its own deal going, right? They've now got a bipartisan panel for ethics reform. Why do we need dueling commissions on ethics reform?
Well, again, I come from the point of view that the more the merrier in terms of people's adding their voice. I guess the question really is who's going to provide meaningful ideas and reform. And what I like about our commission is we have skin in the game because we're citizens. When you talk about public service, we have folks from the military on our commission who know a little bit about public service. I couldn't agree more with Cindy. Sorry we can't fight more because we get along, but there has to be a talk about what do we expect of our public officials? What is the culture? I mean, is minimalism the standard for our public officials? Right. And I think that can't be the case. That right, absolutely can't be the case.
No, you two get along, but let me just inject my own skepticism on this. The last time I saw an ethics duel, it was in the last legislative session, where one bill was being trumped by another bill, and the ultimate outcome, and one might argue the purposeful outcome, was to kill both of them. So is it possible that sometimes you can have a little too much of dueling or competing bodies that are trying to come up with the legislation?
Of course you can, and you can also have a lot of insincere activity in the State House under the dome, people trying to out-ethics one another. But I think that people can sort of ride herd on that. We've gone through a lot in this state. We are a laughingstock of this nation, something that, you know, just kind of came to the fore again this weekend. And I think it's time for people to say enough. You know, Pat's commission, the Joint Committee, a lot of good ideas will come out. There's also a lot that's already on the table. So there is no way we can get through this session with any excuse for not doing something.
Are you seeing any more rustling of your website? I mean, is the public running to you in droves? In Cindy at Illinois Campaign, you've got your own. I mean, are you seeing much more traffic of people demanding change or not?
Again, I don't have perhaps the perspective that Cindy has, because this is sort of a first-time event for me. But yeah, I think the level of anger, and again, it's easy to say, Carol, and I share your cynicism in some respects, but you know,
I prefer to call it skepticism, just to
but,
lighten it
but
a
there's a
little
little bit of both. But I think, you know, there's a gut check time that's coming, and it's coming this spring legislative session, and it's going to keep coming, and I think the people have to keep demanding it. I think situations like this, as sad as they are, whether he committed perjury or didn't, they are an opportunity for the clarion call to continue and get louder. And I think the louder the better, frankly.
Would you each give me your opinion of what Roland Burris has said in these multiple statements? And I'm not even asking you to call it perjury.
No,
just
no.
tell me in your own gut check what it sounds like.
It sounds to me that he's out there legalistically splitting hairs at a time when people just simply want some truth talking.
Mr. Collins?
Again, my first prism is always as a former prosecutor, because that's how I see the world. And I in a situation where so much is at stake, my first instinct is to say, well, what are the facts? You heard from Jim Wagner. When was he notified by the FBI? I happen to think that's a very critical factor. Was the FBI what prompted the change, or was it his reflecting on his testimony? That's a critical issue, and I just don't know the answer to that, to have a judgment. But I do agree with Cindy that there is a sense that, as Representative Cross was saying, this was his day to sort of tell all, and Harry Reid was listening, and everybody was listening, and it's at least disappointing that we didn't hear all the facts on that day.
Would you elaborate a little bit on what Mr. Wagner said? Because you can be, any one of us could be picked up on a federal wiretap of somebody else that we just happen to call in. So we might get a letter. But is there an elevated level of worry if the FBI dials you up and says, or your lawyer, and says, by the way, you've been overheard and we'd like you to come in and talk?
I think so, and as Jim said, that's very much a concerted effort on part of law enforcement to create that anxiety level. But the reason I think it's such a critical issue is, again, was his change, one, because he reflected on his testimony, he said he just got his testimony and he reviewed it, and that's certainly possibly true, or was it because some FBI agent called him and said, you know, it wasn't public knowledge, I don't believe, that the feds were on Rod Blagojevich's phone.
Robert Blagojevich, who was the head of his brother's campaign fund.
So in other words, he could have had this conversation with Rod Blagojevich, but not believed that that was intercepted, because I don't believe, and maybe I'm mistaken here, I don't believe it's public knowledge that the feds were up on his phone. So in other words, he could have recalled that conversation but not known it was recorded until he got the visit. I don't know that, but there are these two competing scenarios, and I think we have to know which one is the case.
And how does it get cleared up for the public?
Well, I mean, I think the bottom line is there are competing scenarios, but what the public is looking for is some leadership here. They're looking for somebody who is leading with values, leading with transparency, and there is a sense that Mr. Burris has already stumbled on that ground. How this gets cleaned up, I think, remains to be seen. Speaking about this specific situation, but I agree with Pat that it gives real impetus to this legislative session in Springfield and getting something done.
You both have been through the wars, either in the prosecutor's office or, you know, in the legislature. On a scale of 1 to 10, pessimistic to optimistic, where are you truly on what can come out of this session?
I've never been more optimistic. That said, it's going to be an uphill battle.
So what is that, a 5? Mr.
5.5.
Mr. Collins?
Well, this is, again, a first-time venture for me, but I am very optimistic because I believe this moment is like no other because of the perfect storm we have.
Would that be like an 8 or a 9?
For my standard, yes.
All right. Cindy Canary, Pat Collins, thank you both for being on Chicago Tonight. There has been some call from some quarters for Senator Burris to resign. If you would like to weigh in on your own opinion on that, join our website.